Hi, friends, and welcome to IBM TV Gamers Den. And I'm Ankit Khanelwal, your host, joining from Delhi, India. And we have Mark Lee joining us from North Carolina.
Yep.
And we have to invite Jitovi, and then we'll talk about first the intro of the show, and then we'll talk about the gaming thing. So let's welcome Jitovi. Jitovi. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
How's it going? I love the new intro music.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. It changed the parameter of the basically it's a little pumpy and it's more towards gaming and all those stuff. So it changed the perception of the show, I think.
Yeah. It brings a lot more. I like that. That was good.
Like he appreciates that kind of music. It got a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more like a actual game, is what you're trying to say, Jacoby?
Yeah, it's more 2000s.
So, Jacoby, now a quick question: how important is music in the gaming industry, especially with games? Because whenever you play a game, you'll have a lot of music, and if there is no good music, I mean, it doesn't reflect in the game as
well. On that, what I
hold on a second,
music
Toby
and streaming and game. Is that my side or is that your side?
I think it's my side because my bandwidth is a little low. Let me check out. No, it's fine.
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. Yeah. So I don't know that the pains hurt you and everything. So if you could just talk once more, Jacoby. Well, Jacoby just appeared.
Where'd he go?
Oh,
welcome to Gamers Den, and we'll replay the intro and then we'll take your feedback right here.
All right, the whole gang is back here now. That's a great thing. So I think what Jacoby was being asked by Ankit was how important is music to the gaming industry and things of that nature. So I'm going to toss it over to Jacoby for that question. I do have to tease Julian about something real quick. I'm beginning to think that Canada is taking over IBM.TV because I had a Canadian musician that was on the online dinner party yesterday. So I'm beginning to think that that whole country is taking over IBM.TV. Just want to let you know that. So
get around.
But coming back to Jacoby, how important is music to the gaming industry? And are there a lot of the games having music incorporated in it? Is it popular music, or is it kind of like that garage band sound where they're doing more technical music, or kind of like the sound? So not so much recorded music of established artists, but like other artists, or the kind of things that you can get away with and not get caught by the gaming police.
So music to gaming is just like sound effects, music, and everything else to movies, to TV shows. It is part of the essential piece that puts you in that suspension of disbelief. Because if you're not in that zone, for example, Marvel does a phenomenal job of it. You're watching a TV show about these superpowered beings doing all these, unbelievable things. Hulk smashing buildings. If it doesn't sound like Hulk is smashing or hitting hard enough, then you're not going to believe that it happens. It's the same thing in a video game. That sound, that music puts you in the mode. One of the great games that just was released is Ghost of Tsushima. That one, the atmosphere, of course, is ancient Asian times, where the whole Mongolian battle. So if you don't hear the music, the old Asian music, you're not going to believe that it's there. You're not going to believe that you're a part of it and experiencing it. And it goes the same thing. Grand Theft Auto, if you're not If it's not West Coast music, because that's where Grand Theft Auto 5 was set. If it's not West Coast, you're not going to believe that it's in the West Coast. So yes, music is extremely important. Grand Theft Auto, for example, is set in more present day times, so you hear all the music of present day. You have older retro style games that are built, this year, but they have that same sound as the 80s games do. And if it doesn't have that sound, then it's not really a retro game. So yeah, sound is extremely important.
So it's almost like the music serves a bit of a role in helping the people to, it almost brings the real world into the game so that they can feel like they're there, which is an interesting thing to consider. Like, for instance, the Mortal Kombat games, the Mortal Kombat theme song, that just became a staple all on its own. Yet nowadays, whenever you see a commercial for a new Mortal Kombat game, they might be using some, like hip hop songs and things like that to try and bring more viewers in. So it's really interesting how the game can both make a song something so noteworthy, it can make it a trademark, but at the same time, games will try and bring in music from the outside as a bit of a tool for influence, it almost seems, and to create that immersion. And again, it makes me think of virtual reality. So in virtual reality games, the sound effects can make all of the difference. For instance, there's this game, I know I always like to go back to Tetris, and it's an old school game that's made today. And Tetris Effect, basically the sound of Tetris Effect is part of the reason why Tetris Effect is amazing. Also the light shows, but the music of the game actually fires off in harmony with the pieces that you play and with the buttons that you press as the player. And so as a result, it gives you this level of immersion that is it's really rare, and it's something that I think we'll see a lot more of in the future with virtual reality as well.
Oh, virtual reality and music is huge because again, it's all about you have to be there. Your eyes physically tell you that you're there. Your body isn't moving, so your body, you cannot physically feel it. So you have to trick your mind, and your mind is a powerful thing. So with your ears and the sound itself, if you hear, there's a game, another VR game that's out there. As you can tell, a lot of the VR games are music oriented, but there's another one called Virtual Hot. Virtual Hot is a puzzle game. It's a very, very fun puzzle game because what happens is you're placed into this simulation where everything is frozen until you move. And as you move, if you move fast, the things around you move fast. If you sit still, everything is stopped. So it moves with your speed. But if you don't believe that you're, when they first place you in the simulation, if you're not in a room and you don't hear the ambient sound of the room, you're not in that room. It doesn't matter how, what it looks like, because your eyes are telling you it's here, but your ears also are telling you that it's elsewhere. So it's that battle. And Julian, you know how the mind works. I mean, that kills that whole suspension of disbelief. And you're like, hey, I'm not really.
Yeah, and that brings up another really interesting point, which has to do with how music in a video game can convey the emotions of the character that you're playing in a way that you can't really get anywhere else. So for instance, if you've ever watched a TV show and you've had subtitles on, every now and then the subtitles will kind of give you a little bit of extra content pertaining to what might have been going on in the minds of the writers. Likewise, it seems that sometimes music in these video games, they'll be set up, for instance, when you're in danger, then you'll get a more intense musical track, or whenever the character is getting back to his homestead, you'll have this kind of peaceful music, or in his favorite village. And I've always wondered about this, if the music is actually like a heads up display for the emotions of the character, or if it's more intended to be like the emotions of the environment, or if it's something that people haven't even really thought about too much, just a mixture of both. But yeah, it's really interesting how that can really connect you with what the character is experiencing.
Oh yeah, and that's a huge part. I mean, take Halo for example. You know how they did the orchestral music, and it's really and that gets into the whole concept of what is a game. Is a game just a little thing that you're playing back and forth, or is it a piece of artwork? And if it's that piece of artwork, it's the same thing as any entertainment industry piece of artwork. Everything comes into play, just like in the movie industry, how that music foreshadows and puts you in that mood. That's the same thing in the game industry. The Last of Us 2 just came out. you'll cry. You'll literally cry playing that game. I am man enough to admit it. You will have tears because not only you feel the pain of the actual actress doing the voice, so you can feel that sound, you can see what's going on and you feel that pain, and then you also have the music on top of it, which is that other layer, and you really are in that emotion that that game is giving you. Same thing with Detroit. Detroit does the same thing where you're placed in a no-win situation, but in that no-win situation, you have to think. Your mind is going, but you don't realize that you're listening to the ambient noise to try and figure out what's the right answer. Then you're also listening to the music to see if the music gives you a clue, but you're all into your emotions because of the music, everything that it's telling you and everything that it's portraying. But yeah, music is huge.
I guess because they're both seen as kind of recreational outlets, they just go together so well.
Yep.
But Jodovi, do you think that when we play a game like level 1, level 2, and a professional is playing, or just like me, a person is just playing for enjoying, we have different music based on AI relevant, so that we know that on which level or what we are doing, because I think music can change the perception and the player's point of view and what level they are playing, because that gives us a lot of other, because there's a lot of engagement and a lot of goosebumps while you play a game, and when you are in a serious mood as compared to a person is playing as just a hobby. So do you think we should change the music based on that variations in future? Not now, maybe.
So it that all depends upon the game itself. So if you've got a story-based game, that story-based game is going to run like a movie. At the beginning of the movie, the music is different than at the end of the movie, because once you hit that crescendo, then you got to move on. With a story-based game, that's it. That deals with all RPGs and linear story-based games, so on and so forth.
But it's interesting how certain areas will have the same type of sound, and then it will become so iconic for that part of the game. It's almost like a hook in a song.
Yep.
How you reach this certain point, and it's just so iconic. For instance, there's this series called Kingdom Hearts, and Kingdom Hearts music, it's just so idiosyncratic and unique to me. Whenever I hear something even close to it, I just think, oh, that sounds just like Kingdom Hearts, or oh, that sounds like in this Kingdom Hearts game when you enter Traverse Town, or something like that. But the thing is, Kingdom Hearts, it was a very emotional series, and so they really capitalized on music. And a lot of their opening scenes were basically, I guess, what you could call anime music videos of sorts. Like Simple and Clean. You know what I'm talking about, Jatobi? Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So it's interesting to think about that, and how, I guess, with just the different types of cultures that you'll see in different countries, how that will carry over into how they put their different art forms into a video game. Because Kingdom Hearts comes from Square or Square Enix, and they have a lot of Japanese involvement and things like this. So it's so interesting how they bring it together in this kind of grand fashion.
So Kingdom Hearts, even to go even further than Kingdom Hearts, if you take Final Fantasy VII that they just had to re-release because it was such a big game, and all the music within there is so they released a CD with the music.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So and that goes for a lot of games. Even if you go back to even Super Mario Brothers, the Mario music is iconic because it's stuck in your head. It was a casual game, but it's stuck in your head. But they've actually gone and put that in the symphonies. Well, they've taken orchestras and created, I guess it'd be symphonic music off of it, or whatever the word would be. But yes, they turn the music using, all the, violins to everything else. Music is huge. If you have a game, and the same thing with sound effects, if you have a game that doesn't sound correct, people will break down the sounds of the Fortnite guns. If it doesn't sound like it has a kickback, or if it sounds like it's something odd, people will get mad at it, and people will say that that's not correct, and then they'll lose. It'll lose points in their mind that, okay, well, I'm just not really into this game. But the better the sound effects, the better this music, that can help tremendously.
And what about
world building? Oh, sorry.
Oh, same thing with world building. Civilization. If Civilization didn't have a decent sound a track where, you know, when you get to the robots, which I was so happy I made it there. Oh my goodness. When you get to the robots, if the robots' lasers aren't blowing stuff up, blowing up tanks, and the tanks don't sound correct, or if they don't sound like they move right, or if the sound around it, the speech from each character, from each nation, that was the beauty that Civilization did, is that each nation stuck with its dialect. So when you have the Mayans speaking, they're speaking that Mayan dialect, the ancient Latin dialect, or Latin speech. Same thing with Europe, and when you do London, and when you have Greece in there, and all the other leaders from there, they're speaking from that tongue, and you buy into it more because they're speaking from that tongue, and not everybody's speaking with, you know, an English accent, or, you know, an American it's sounding from Georgia. No, it's just everybody has their own tongue, and in Civilization, being a world builder, that's important. Same
Right,
thing.
it really does. It's like we just perceive it that way. It's like if there's no
Yeah.
sound, something is just just not real, is what it seems like. And it also makes me think of directional hearing and how that has made gameplay a lot more interesting. For instance, in Fortnite, you can have directional hearing, and something like directional hearing, of course, that's a huge advantage whenever you're trying to figure out which directions people might come at you from and what kind of, you know, weapons they might have and things like that. But yeah, that directional hearing added a level of immersion that I wasn't expecting it to really give. Because usually I would just play from, you know, with the sound coming out of my TV, so it would just be in front of me. But whenever I did finally plug in the headphones and then engaged in that, it was, you know, it was really interesting to see how that happens. And I guess at the end of the day, that really is what the music does. It's just about building that world. And it's like taking experience and making experience out of experience in some ways.
One thing that I think you would be great at looking into, Julian, which one is more important? Is it the sound or is it the sight? Because if you think about it, in video games themselves, you can have the most simplistic artwork there, but have a beautiful sound. Tetris, Beat Saber, just tons and tons of games are out there. Pistol Whip is another VR game. Virtual Hot that I was talking about earlier. Those are all games that have very simple looks.
It's almost like the music makes us feel like there's more information than we're actually taking in. It's like we think that there's a lot going on and that we're just narrowing down our focus to this little thing, when in all actuality, you know, it could just be what could be described as a dead little box with a tune playing in the background. Yeah, it just goes to show how much we value music as people, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I think that'd be kind of a fun experiment per se to do, to figure out which one in your mind is more important, because your sight's heavy. I mean, if for that VR, if you don't see yourself drop, your body doesn't drop. You can't hear yourself drop, really. I mean, you can hear the wind moving by, but in a roller coaster, if you don't see yourself drop, you don't feel yourself drop on the VR.
You know, and it's an interesting balance you're describing, because if you have too much going on, you probably won't want to get blasted in your head. For instance, I've heard people joke about, you know, whenever they're trying to find the proper address on a street, they'll turn down the radio as if it helps them see better, right? And it's not, of course, whenever they turn down the radio, it's not that they can see better, but maybe it's because they would have so much visual complexity that having that audio complexity would just be off balance. So I think that what you're getting at is this kind of, basically, if it's really simplistic, it has to have a staple sound. And I think that once it has that, then it becomes something that seems like it's supposed to be that way. That's really interesting. I've never thought about that in a sense. And it really does go to show how important it is for indie game developers that are trying to make their way to just have a proper musical background that will just keep people coming back, and it will give them something that whenever they remember the game, they won't even remember that they remember the music, but they will remember the music, and they'll remember the impressions they had as they experienced it. And those will be the things that will keep them coming back, or at least, you know, keep them engaged in the franchise.
But the craziest part, how music can fill in that gap. Why can't graphics fill in the gaps of music loss or sound loss? That's where it really becomes interesting, because you can have the most graphically impressive dinosaur, but if it sounds like a chicken,
Think of it as a chicken in a dinosaur suit. Yeah.
so how come that won't fill that gap, but sound can fill back the other way? So that means there's so many avenues to look at and see how it breaks down in the mind of.
It's like pentameter. Yeah, it's something about the rhythm of processing information at it, and because we're like pattern-seeking creatures, and something about that, as opposed to, visually. There are people who are just art critics, and they'll just go and walk through the museums, and maybe they'll have that same level of experience. But I know for a fact, it's just like you said. I will rarely get goosebumps just across my body whenever I'm looking at a painting. It would have to be really impactful, really meaningful. Mm-hmm. Whereas I can hear a piece of music that isn't necessarily the most complex thing out there, but just because it happens to touch onto some idea that inspires awe or something that is almost difficult to reconcile with, it can just again, it's because it's like representing something in the natural world. It makes it feel real. And then whenever you see or you experience something awesome inside of that perceived world, it just rips across it feels so amazing and deep at the same time. Yeah, I don't think that visuals could ever actually create that experience.
I mean, could it though?
It would, because here's the thing. I think of it like this. We evolved so that if we hear someone screeching or if we hear something extremely crazy, our hair is going to stand up and we're going to get this kind of rush of chemicals where we think that there's something huge in the environment that we don't fully understand, like a kind of awesome threat, an awful threat, possibly. But to me, it almost seems like this, like it's something related to the environment, and we're aligned in a sense to where when we hear that certain chord, it's just like, oh, I recognize that note, like that low pitch is this emotion, which makes me feel this way.
So here's where the fun part, another fun part to think about it. And this all deals with video games as well. So we're talking about filling in those gaps, how the music fills in the gaps of that imagination on the visual side. When you walk into a dark alley and can't see anything, or if the light goes off suddenly, you're panicking because you can't see. Mm-hmm. Not that you hear anything, but you can't see. Is this all due to your mind filling in the gaps?
So a lot of it is because our eyes are basically connected to our brains through the occipital lobe. So we are hugely visual creatures, but I think that just the skill sets that we evolved based on our eyes are slightly different than I think that sound attaches to our nervous system in a different way, whereas the visuals directly attach to something more abstract. For instance, we can look at something and we can realize that it's just a kind of symbol or a representation. It can be in this kind of mental space. But whenever it comes to a sound is something that's more primal. It's not quite as primal as, for instance, a smell or a taste that can trigger a certain kind of memory, but it still seems like something that is directly hardwired into the nervous system, where it's like when you hear that sound, or it could even be like a battle cry. I remember I learned once that a soldier who performs a battle cry on the field will experience a 25% boost to their strength immediately afterwards. So there really is something about this level of sound which just like tears through our being, and it even enables us to take control of faculties we might not have otherwise. Like it can trigger an adrenaline rush in a way that seeing something just won't, because it feels real.
And the battle cry, is used in all the world builders and war games and everything else. And that 25% is actually part of that. So for example, in Civilization, the first thing that you can get in terms of upgrading your soldiers is a battle cry. That battle cry ups you 7%. But then then as it goes further, as you keep increasing your soldiers, they are able to get a higher percentage. But
right. And if we think about a battlefield, they'll have drummers on the battlefield, but they're not going to have like actually there might be a flag waver, but basically seeing the symbol of the flag isn't quite as likely, I think, to just compel that response as just hearing that sound. It's just something. It's maybe as old as we are, for all we know, just that process. It really, it could come down to the fact it could be older than Homo sapiens. It could be related to humans of the past. For instance, there are some ancient cultures we don't really know much about. We didn't think they would be able to have much cultural complexity, and yet we'll find that they have really ornate kind of ceremonies going on. We'll think, well, how can they do this if they don't even have, like religions? They don't have these kinds of cultures and all this. But yeah, it's it really does build the entire world, and it makes me think also of just what it would feel like to go from one environment into another. So whenever you go from one into another, you feel a huge difference, and it's not the same as whenever you just see something. So yeah, it's a really profound kind of thing to go into, is how the music actually affects the psyche.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, I mean, it's funny. And then, so to touch even on the primal side, if, the whole which came first, chicken or the egg, we heard things before we painted things on the walls. So is it that our connection with our eyes isn't as connected to the ears? And it being, I mean, this is really an abstract thought, but is it quite possible that that's similar to round it back around to the gaming industry? Is it quite possible that due to the youth of our eye connection, it hasn't evolved enough? It evolved the way that the ears have, the same way the music and movie industry has evolved far beyond the gaming industry, because the gaming industry just started roughly about in the 70s.
It's a really, I think the answer is yes. And it's, what really points that out to me is something that I could look at in the animal kingdom, which is that there are many animals who will have some kind of musical recognition or tendency, whereas their, visual processes might not be anything close to ours. For instance, birds, although birds do have their own unique visual tricks. For instance, I think it was recently found that they can see things related to the magnetic field, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and for birds, they would use music also to engage in their hierarchy. So really, music and vibration, these things could go back to the origins of complex life, to, just responding to the kind of ebb and flow of the tide in order to know when to move in, so to speak.
Now, is there any sort of music, Jacoby? I'm sorry. Now, is there any sort of music that you think doesn't fit into the gaming industry? Because I'm thinking about gaming industry. I'm thinking I've heard jazz, I've heard rock, I've heard different kinds of things. But I'm wondering, like, will heavy metal work in the gaming industry, or will it not work? And also, if folks are watching us and everything, and maybe they're independent musicians, and I know they're independent video makers as well. So how can those two folks connect and actually work together? Because I know that there are probably some folks that are thinking to themselves, I've got some music that would fit in with the game, and I need to reach out to these game makers. So how would they go about doing that? Is there a clearinghouse for musicians?
So every genre of music fits into the game industry, just like every genre of music fits into the movie industry and the other entertainment industries. Well, music is an entertainment industry, but yes, it fits just like everything else. It's all game dependent. Beat Saber just released a Green Day whole album on Beat Saber that you can use. Green Day is different from Imagine Dragons. Imagine Dragons is different from some of the other rap artists that they put out there. So in Beat Saber's one. Guitar Hero's big about rock. So yeah, every genre of music fits into the gaming industry. It all depends on what game. I mean, it's all dependent upon the game itself.
And also who they're trying to market it to is something that they'll include a lot of as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting.
What I was thinking about before, I was wondering, what do you think other senses can do to impact the game experience? Because usually all that we're used to having is visuals, and then we might also, hear things. And then as we just add more dimensions to that, for instance, maybe we'll have directional hearing, or maybe we'll have sounds that are triggered by actual interactions with us. It feels more real to us. Beyond that, I guess there haven't really been any other improvements besides rumble packs and controllers, where you can experience a bit of a vibration whenever your character will, for instance, bump into a wall or take damage or something like this. How do you think the rumble packs have changed the game? Do you think that they really made a big difference, or do you think that that sense of touch is not what we're after when we play a video game?
So it's a hit or miss. Rumble packs are great. Like the PlayStation 5 is going to be updating their controllers to a new sense because the Rumble pack has been that haptic touch, I guess it is.
Mhm.
That's big. It's big in phones. I mean, you're pushing a button that's there, but it's not really there. You're just pushing a screen. So all that stuff, that vibration is important in some cases. In other cases, it's not really. They've gone over the top with having there's a vest that you can get. There's
Power Glove.
the whole Power Glove.
Right.
But there's an actual vest for a VR experience that it was in Atlanta and a few other places. Marvel did, and it was an Avengers experience. I forgot the actual title of it, but again, they had the whole body vest, and you could feel some vibrations in that. So you can go over the top with it, but your average everyday player, in the hand, that physical touch, because your fingers, and this is another one, Julian, that you should look up. It's weird that your hands, of all things, that's where all the touch and everything else people want as a gamer. They don't care about it on the arms. They don't care about it on the legs or the body, even though that it happens. With walking around, for the VR games, walking around is a big problem. So they try to overcome it with little paddles that you can push on your feet to make you move forward and stuff. And they've come up with the other ideas. But everything people want the vibrations or anything to happen in their hands, I guess because it's a control issue. I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, that's a really good point. What do you think of? Do you remember back in the day when people were really excited about what they called smell-o-vision, where
Yes.
you were going to apparently be able to smell things? So, what are your thoughts on that? As far as I can tell, it really seems like the sound wave is the thing that is most likely to induce this really what could be considered an existential experience from something rather mundane. But I would think that the smell-o-vision would potentially have something because of the fact that, we are basically the part of our brain that interprets smell is kind of separate from the other senses, and it's closer to the memory. So as a result, our smells and our memories are really tightly connected. And I feel like maybe that could create a unique kind of gaming experience that hasn't been put forth yet, but it is kind of weird to consider at the same time.
So the developers themselves, brilliant individuals, smart, but we're all 5 years old at heart. Smell-o-vision will become a bunch of farts.
Oh, you know what? I just saw recently, it's now possible. There's a thing where you can simulate tastes on your tongue, right? Because you have different regions on your tongue that, do you know what I'm talking about? What do you think? Do you think that could potentially ever take place in a video game? Well, I mean, it obviously could in like a cooking game, but that's kind of hyper focused. But you don't think that the ability to basically taste or to smell or to touch or to see, you think that those will just never have the same impact at creating that environment? Because that's how it's starting to seem to me.
I think I don't think smell and taste would come into play because there aren't that many games that are going to be utilizing that as a focus of the game. Besides, your chef shows and maybe a few other games, but everything else, like if you're going to play Resident Evil, you don't want to smell the dead bodies. You don't want to taste the dead bodies. You just want to walk through, panic, and get out because you're scared to death, and that's all you want to do.
Imagine that would keep people from swimming across the bay in Grand Theft Auto.
Very true. Very true.
Real true. Toby, you mentioned a game that I have heard some musicians don't even really like that much, which you talked about Guitar Hero earlier, and I know some musicians feel that game actually does not do as good as some other games. I know that there's a game called Rocksmith that is actually more like the actual learning of the playing, and there's a whole battle between apparently Rocksmith and some other folks. But remember when Guitar Hero came out, a number of musicians were concerned that it was not really training folks into how to play music and things of that nature. So it didn't have that educational component. And then apparently this other company came out, Ubisoft, and created Rocksmith, and apparently they're going back and forth over some trade kind of disputes between them and some other companies. Have you heard anything about this? And what are your thoughts about these kind of like games that are supposedly teaching folks music or about how to play versus those that are just kind of like showing you how to play air guitar?
So you have it's Rock Band and Guitar Hero. Those were the two head-to-heads. I mean, you're not going to open up for the boss because you became a giant rock band master. You're not doing that. Yeah, I mean, Bruce, he's not calling you. But the thing is, you can get out there and have fun. And that's what the game is about. It's about, yes, you can gain some education. Okay, these are different chords. With Guitar Hero, okay, it has the panels up here that you can go up and down. But most of the times it's like karaoke. That's really what it is. You're not going to sing with Donna Summers coming out of the karaoke bar. You're going to be great. You're going to be good. You can handle yourself. You can learn and get better, but you're still a karaoke singer. And that's nothing against people who are great karaoke singers, but it's just, there's a different level. If you are a phenomenal guitar player, if you are, with Aerosmith sitting in the back, rocking the bass, or if you were playing with, matter of fact, gentleman from Kool and the Gang just passed away. If you're playing with those guys, playing the guitar, you were super talented. You were on that pro super amazing level. I'm not going to be coming out of Rock Band and taking your job, no matter how hard I try. Because it's a different skill set. So yeah, I mean, Rock Band's a great game, but there are also a ton of other musical games that are out there. Beat Saber right now dominates the PSVR market by a lot. It is a music rhythm-based game. You take two lightsabers, and yes, we can't call them lightsabers. George Lucas might get mad at us, but you take two things that are red and blue, but lit up, and you're slicing up different squares, and it's on rhythm and it's on beat, and you're not going to be a dominant dancer doing this whole rhythm thing, but you can learn to dance from that. There was dance samurai, and yeah, I mean, you're not going to.
Makes me think of Fruit Ninja inspiring kids to go.
It looks like Angus got a question for us and everything. I want to get to Angus' question. So, Angus, it's on you.
So I think those music games are good beginner sessions or learning lessons for people who wanted to learn music, basically, because that could be the basic level. And also, Jitovi, do you think that if suppose a musician comes up with a game and he wants you to play a music or some kind of a guitar or an instrument with that musician, and that gives a different so what I'll do is, suppose I'll just thinking out loudly, suppose I'm a musician, I'll play guitar. So I'll create some kind of guitar which connects to the game, and then people buy my guitar to play music with me. So we can have those kind of control, or maybe some kind of stimulating chair or things like that, which enable me to play music with a big musician. So that could be a game where we can create a lot of music with that musician live.
So it is great, but the tough part is, say if Mark is the great musician that he is, all three of us want to play with Mark right now. How do we do that?
Money.
You have VR and AR. I think
so.
With
That's
VR,
where
with VR and AR we can do that.
So what I'm saying is, I think that the way that it would have to work is the way that they did Rock Band and Guitar Hero and all the other ones, is you create a digital simulation of that individual and then you play with them, because you're not going to have Mark plugging in his guitar and playing over and over. What you're going to have is that digital simulation. And that's what they actually do in the game, is that you're playing in the background with one of the stars that you choose. They used to
What I'm saying is that if we give them some kind of a music, kind of a screen, maybe some kind of a control with the chair and things like that, which looks like that I'm also a musician because I have all the instruments intact, and then now I'm playing rather than playing through my keyboard.
Yeah. So they've got they actually have, it's similar to the golf stuff. They had So there is some of the baseball players, what they used VR for, and it's the same thing with musicians. They actually try to pick up the pace of the speed of the pitch or the actual figuring out where players are leading off using VR. They've done that before. There's a group called they're a home run group, the Long Haul Bombers. What they have is a digital speed thing on the back, so they're able to track speed. These are all things that people have used in video games and other things alike like the Nintendo Wii started it. They had the actual Wii Plus remote, where the Wii Plus was an actual piece that picked it up and picked up speed actually a little bit better than the actual Wiimote did. But these are all things that are there that have been taken advantage of. Even the guitar itself, plugging it in to get tuned and sounds and everything else. All that technology is there, making it into a video game. The tough part of making the video game is you want to have the biggest base. And to have the biggest base, you're not going to be able to plug in with, I have me a Fender sitting in the corner. Not really, because those things are expensive and I can't play the guitar. But I have one of those Fender guitars sitting in the corner. How many people have that?
Right.
If your base is only 100,000, how much money are you actually going to spend and invest? Because making these video games, if you're going to make a big time AAA title, you're looking at 5 to 10 years right there. And you have all these individuals that you've got to bring in to get the skins, the sounds, the programming. I mean, there's just so much in a video game process that people, I guess, don't really realize or see. Just to get the one image happening on the screen, you've got to have so much background programming that's happening. So many people creating the textures just for that character to look correct. So all these things have to happen. And you want to be able to sell and market that piece to millions. And you can't have a base of 1,000. So if you're going to make a video game like that, if you're not reaching that million person base, you're losing tons and tons of money.
Yeah,
So,
you're right.
You know what it makes
I
me
was just
think
thinking
of?
about the music aspect and everything, just in terms of like games and video games. I'm actually going to date myself here and everything, because I remember this game when video games first came out. There was that game Pong, which folks remember its very corny sound and everything. But then there was another game. It was not a video game, but I guess technically it definitely had some aspects of video game, but it included music, and that was the notorious game Simon. And I remember the game Simon, which was nothing but musical notes, and you just sit there pressing that button left and right, trying to get these musical notes. I'm sure Jacoby remembers that game as well.
Oh yeah,
That was a block party.
whoo. and Julian, that's a song game that killed you with the song and the music. I'm gonna push it. I gotta push it. I'm just gonna miss.
Yeah, you feel it. It's real. It's real.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, something else this makes me think of. So I guess the reason that Guitar Hero was able to do it, because just like Jatovi was describing, it takes such a huge fan base. And if you have an instrument that's not going to have that level of bass, you probably won't have much success. It makes me think of, I guess you could say, like lyricism or rapping and freestyling. There haven't been any games that have been able to capitalize on, for instance, having people create their own freestyles or create their own raps, because it's almost like it depends on the ability to interpret speech in some sense, or we don't know how. It's almost like we don't have a set, structure of how lyrics should come together and things like this. But I think that something like that could be big.
So I think it goes deeper than that. They have put out DJ Hero 1 and 2. DJ Hero was basically you're scratching. You're using the two turntables and you're going to town. And it was actually a fun game. The music was great. They did a remake to Bobby Blue Bland, and it was beautiful. I'll send it to you, Mark. You'll love it.
Thank you.
And it was Ain't No Love in the City. And they did a phenomenal job with it. But the thing is, not many people bought it. A lot of people liked the music, but not many people kept with it. The music, the hip hop and everything else, that usually fits in the background of different games as well as the other stuff. Beat Saber is one that picks up on it. But in terms of doing your vocals and everything
The
else.
lyrics. Yeah, the lyrics.
Guitar Hero and Rock Band both tried it. There were a few other games that did it as well. The problem is us. A lot of times we are shy. You don't have a ton of people doing karaoke because they're afraid not to sing in the shower or not to sing in the car alone. They don't want people to hear us. So being able to rap and everything else, I think that's more due to the fact that nobody wants to get out and be that rapper and then are told you suck, or get out there and sing up a storm. You can't hit a note. Nobody wants to hear that, and I think that's part of the reason why that whole the lyrical side of things hasn't come out.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just wonder how video games are going to impact the hip hop industry over time, because hip hop has always been so defined by these kind of fringe cultures. And, you know, as more regulations pop up again, these video games are the only places where you can just be free with the culture.
So with hip hop, hip hop is big in video games. It's all, again, game dependent. You're not going to get a full blown Final Fantasy that has hip hop in there. You may get some K-pop in there, depending upon the actual environment that they're building. Same thing with there's a new game coming out built by the guys that did Witcher. The name
Cyberpunk?
Yes, Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
That'll probably have hip hop and rock and a whole bunch of other things in there because it's building that future Neo New York and Tokyo, I think it is mixed, but it's building this future reality. So it's got to have whatever future music is going to be there. Hip hop is huge in all the NBA 2K games. It's in Madden. It's in any sports game pretty much. But yeah, hip hop is thriving in the video game market because, I mean, it's recognized as, okay, well, if I'm going to play basketball, hip hop is going to be there. I mean, it's part of the basketball culture.
Yeah, hip hop gets you hyped. I mean, it actually is full of what you could consider chants and, you know, like just those ad libs sometimes. It's just like a coach. It's just like, go. Look at that in Tetris Effect as well. They have this one level where it's basically a hip hop style level, and there's this guy rapping, and the whole time that you're, you know, building it up, it's like you have these triangles and these light shows going on. But it was really nice, and that was one of the more iconic songs from Tetris Effect, I think, was that hip hop song. But most of the songs were, I guess you could just say, electronic dance music and more, you know, complex orchestrations of that kind.
Yeah, because I just looked up something, and apparently there's a game that's actually based on the old movie Beat Street, because I just looked it up, and it says that it's the first beat 'em up with innovative single touch controls, and they're saying that it's a love letter to the 90s beat 'em up genre. So I'm guessing that it's probably got like that early hip hop kind of sound from like Beat Street and stuff like that.
Was that the Def Jam game?
It was actually made by something called Lucky Cat Studios. So whatever that is.
Okay, you just brought up a huge point, Jatovi. The use of video games in hip hop. Like, for instance, you know anything about 50 Cent?
Yep.
Yeah, you know 50 Cent's Bulletproof franchise? You know, I feel like the hip hop industry uses video games in a really unique kind of way that a lot of other industries don't capitalize on as much.
Yeah, I mean, it fits into, so of course it fits into K-pop and all the other stuff like that. But yes, hip hop fits well with the video game market, especially again, it's all that game dependent, and those games are so recognizable and set for casual fans that people pick it up really quick and easy. Like Def Jam created a whole video game. They had a whole fight game. They had they worked with NFL Street, if I remember. But yes, hip hop is there, and
I remember that game. It's like you could select rappers, and then basically you just get in the octagon, and it's, you know, classic fighting game between different rappers, and basically, you know, they're turning the whole concept of rapper beefs into an entire game series, and you know, they're doing it in a kind of creative way, but it's something that you don't really see going on with people from other industries. I know that Jack Black made a video game, and that was pretty interesting, the fact that he made a video game. Well, otherwise, it almost seems like it almost seems like a lot of these musical genres are just too out of touch almost with what video games are considered to try to achieve. It's almost like hip hop is the only one that can just hit it right on the head each time. And again, just look at Fortnite. Look at the types of music and musicians that Fortnite will bring on board, and that'll pretty much show you what's the most popular. But it would be interesting if we could find a way to bring classical music into it, or just all these other forms.
So all music genres are represented in video games, and even like classical music is huge. If you take any RPG, you have classical music. Legend of Zelda, which they're actually putting out the part 2 of the last one on the Switch. That's supposed to be coming next year. But again, that's all classical music.
Gotcha.
So
in the past, people were a bit stereotyped against those RPGs as well. They didn't like RPGs. They would say they're too nerdy. So it's interesting. These games that aren't considered nerdy, they would have the hip hop.
Yeah, Ankit's got a point that he wants to make. So I want to get to Ankit and everything.
We can integrate Spotify kind of a platform and a gaming platform together, so that people can listen to music and also play games. And it's kind of an open platform where you pay and subscribe and things like that.
And so way back when, during, I think it was the Sega not the Sega CD that did it. It was the first PlayStation. But they actually did. I mean, that's the incorporation of Spotify, whatever music you should want to listen to. All that's been there before, because PC players have been doing that for years. You have your own desktop and you're playing whatever game you want to. But then
what I'm saying is that integrating on a common platform. I mean, right now we are doing it separate.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was getting So some of those, that's been going on for a while. Even that's where Twitch had stopped people from playing Spotify in the background because of music licensing. But in terms of games themselves have been incorporating different music artists and music groups, so on and so forth, into their systems. They can't really have it set to where you have the true freedom to say, okay, I want my playlist in there. Because if they don't have the music license to that playlist or the music rights to that artist that you put on, they could get dinged. So they have their own playlist. One of the Rocket League actually has one of the best setups with the music in the background. When you first get there, you're already listening to their Spotify list or their select music that's already on there. I mean, developers have found ways of putting in their list of music. NBA 2K, Madden, what they do is they have a whole playlist that you can choose from, about 20 or 30 songs that you can choose from to have playing in your menus and everything else. And then you can go and edit that as a player. But as just having, a personal Spotify incorporated into an actual game, they probably won't do that unless the music licenses.
License, because license would not be an issue, because if suppose I play a game and I have a Spotify, I'm paying to Spotify as well. Rather than paying to Spotify, I can pay to that gamer, and then I can play game as well as listen to songs. That's
where the game itself isn't incorporated into, or Spotify isn't incorporated into the game. So you have the game on a separate browser and Spotify on a separate browser, but you can't.
What I'm saying is that it should be a common platform.
Yeah, it would be nice, but again, it jumps into that music licensing, and that becomes another battle.
That's not a thing. Because what happens is that what I understand with the music license, you need to have license of different countries or maybe an IP, and then once you have that IP, once you pay them regularly, you can play the music only to those people who are a part of that royalty concept basically around the world. So once you have license, you can play the music, because the more music you play, and then the musicians will get the royalty out of it, because they have to mention that someone played the music.
But that's why
Are you imagining a situation where there's a platform where, for instance, just like on Spotify, someone can have a random song come up and then they can give it a thumb up or a thumb down, and then there will be another random song based on that? Is that what you're describing with games? Where
I'm saying is that suppose if I play a Tetris, while playing a Tetris with you, or maybe I'm playing alone, and my Spotify or whatever music I play, that playlist, or if I pick up a song, the song will play in the background, and then I'm playing the game.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, there are games like that, especially on the mobile platform, because mobile apps are able to be programmed to access your music library from your phone.
Right.
So you'll find more games like that on the mobile platform, just because it's easier for them to access. Because just like what you're saying with the licensing, whenever someone has the file already on their phone, the programmers can just be like, oh, well, we're just using their music that's on their phone. We don't have to worry about the licensing. So, so that'll be something. It makes me think of these games like there was one called, I think it was Shape Wars, where basically it's like you're these little shapes in Geometry Wars. It's really similar to Geometry Wars, except your enemies spawned and moved according to the music that was being played. So it was really brilliant because the music that you choose actually dictates, how they'll strategize against you and the flow of the whole battle. So that was really interesting. But for a minute, I thought you were talking about a platform where you can just rate a small game and it's like you'll just get flashed into another random level of some other random game that might happen to be related to the experience. And I was thinking of that, and I thought that would be really interesting, like a kind of...
I'm talking about that as well. I'm talking about, suppose I'm traveling to US, and that flight is like 40 hours flight. Now I want to play a game, and I want to listen to music as well. So I have an app where I'm paying $99 a month or whatever, an annual fees, and I'm not paying anything to a gaming app or a Spotify app. I'm giving to this app, where I can play a game and listen to songs.
Right. Yeah. That's just a matter of programming, I guess. At the end of the day, well, assuming that you already have,
it jumps into that whole situation of that licensing, and I don't think developers, just like Julian was describing, you're going to have that if it's a separate thing from the actual game where they can access. Then that's not the license. But if you're incorporating it all into one, then that's where you're going to run into that trouble.
But Jacoby,
I think I'm gathering what you're saying. I mean, having just that one main app, you log into that one main app, and then everything is there. But what I'm saying,
if we sort out the trouble, do you think would that be an interesting format for people who play games and listen to songs?
It would definitely upset the people who want to make the game and want to control everything that you experience. They might be upset that you replace their music with something else.
It's not mandatory to listen songs. You can stop the song if you want. You can play it. I mean, it depends on you, basically.
I trust me. I completely agree. I think that would be a phenomenal thing to have just a one application. You log in. I'm now logged into the game and my music at one spot.
Was it ever possible in Grand Theft Auto to play your own music through the radio?
It was. Then they stopped.
But it's still like where you have the music in a separate kind of place and you just access it. So
so they used to do that. It was a radio station that you could choose on the radio, but then they stopped doing that. But again, I think that the reason they stopped, I think, is the same reason that we're talking about. It was the same reason that Twitch stopped, because if I'm playing a game live online and, I'm streaming out my music, well, the license, they didn't want that to happen. So they cut the licenses and told people they can't do that. So that honestly would be a great.
This gets into hacking. This gets into modding your own system. If you want to open up the sound file and you want to replace openthedoor.wave with, like NWA.wave or whatever it is you're listening to.
But I think that would be a great question to ask actually a lawyer in the music industry. If we can figure that out of how that music license would work. Because from what I had understood is that they could not do that because of licensing responsibility.
I'm working on that for IBM TV, so we can sort that out, because we need the same license for IBM TV as well. So I think.
And we do have a lawyer that's been on the show a couple of times, right? So we'll have to get Mr. Mark. I can't remember his last name. I know it begins with an L as well, but we'll have to.
I'm not about that guy, but we are talking to someone else about some licensing for music industry. So I think we can sort that matter as well.
Yeah,
And I think it's that one. So Jacoby, we just need to buy a game and then implement the music. Just to do a test.
Why not have it to where whenever you're playing a game, you can just make it look like yourself inside of a video game? It's practically the same thing. It's almost getting into this idea of whenever we start just plugging and playing with like our own things from real life to make it seem more whatever related to real life, more realistic, maybe more different in some senses.
Why not?
Yeah, it's something that I feel like that could be kind of a wave. If something like that was to take place, it would be something that would affect lots of different aspects of gaming. People would want to start customizing things in a new kind of way. People have always liked customization, but that's like a different level of customization.
But I think that we're already seeing that, Jacoby, because I just wanted to bring this up and everything, because I was talking to a new friend of mine at one of our local restaurants, but they're into K-pop, and you mentioned K-pop earlier, and K-pop does seem to do that. They have where they're putting music to games, and the games also have artwork to them. So, like when she was telling me how much she was spending on her K-pop, she was basically telling me that her parents would have a fit if they knew how much she was spending, because it was kind of like there was a combination package of what they were doing. So it was a combination of the music, the games, some artwork, but it was definitely combined. And so K-pop does seem to be doing that from what she was telling me.
Yeah, K-pop is
But
big.
that's about a music
Yeah,
game.
but
I think.
punches in
That's
everything.
We are talking about integrating of real game with the music.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
the thing is with K-pop, it's like they speak with. So what I was saying about it being a design choice, a lot of times people might decide to take these things away. Maybe it's because it's harder. Maybe they think it's less likely people will make use of the functionality. Maybe it's because they just want to exert, creative control over what the person hears. So that could be related to that.
it's I think it just like Ankit talking about what he has to go through to jump through hoops with a lawyer.
Yeah.
It's money. It's all about the money.
See, what I'm saying is that what I understand with gaming is that because I would like to play game whenever I have time, whenever I can't do anything else. So people who are traveling, they can play small games and they can enjoy music as well, and they can earn a lot of things. That's what I said. I mean, people do a lot of waiting at different places. But this is not for serious gamers, because for serious gamers, they would like to be in the game and they wanted to concentrate with the game. But this is for those people who just play as an entertainment or casual gaming and stuff like that, basically.
Oh yeah, the casual gamer. I mean, that's perfect. But the thing is, I think it all rolls back to that money piece, and that if you can't get past that money piece and that law piece, then
Imagine if you had real books in Skyrim. Imagine if you had real books in Skyrim. That'd be amazing. I love reading all the books in the Elder Scrolls game.
So, when we talk about money, I wanted to know what's happening between Fortress and Apple.
Oh, the whole Apple, Epic, Google giant mess that's happening, because you saw that Apple is now so Epic. The way that it started is that Epic, of course, well, it started way back when, because Epic created its own Epic Store. Epic wanted to market its own stuff and have control over its own product. Great. It's been there. It's a smart idea. I mean, it has a huge following. You need that. But Epic is also having Fortnite and other games on Google, and you're able to sell your stuff on all multiple different platforms on iOS. And so Epic still wanted to sell V-Bucks through Epic. Epic actually, Epic wants money. I mean, let's be honest. Epic wants its own money. Google wants their money. Apple wants their money. And that's, again, I guess this relates still to the music industry as well. It's all about money. Apple and Google, they both take, roughly about 30% off whatever you sell. So Epic did not want to give up that 30% on that anymore, which is smart, because, again, they wanted their money. Their move here actually could help the smaller developer, which I'm actually in favor of what Epic's doing, because, okay, they can help people. Because that whole that developer market is struggling, because that 30% is a huge markup. So what Epic wanted was them to drop it, and Google and Apple, they're not going to drop it. So Google and Apple, well, what Epic did was they created a store within their program to try and, okay, well, we're going to get our money this way then, and it's not going to go through the Apple Store and everything.
Programmers are so tricky.
You got it. And so then Apple and Epic, or Apple says, no, you're not doing that. Not doing that. We're not going to have Fortnite here. You're not going to sell V-Bucks through Fortnite and still make money, and we're not getting our cut. No, get out of here. So they kicked them off. Google kicked them off. Epic tried to sue and stop them, but it didn't work. So they're off of the iOS store. They almost lost all of the developers that were using the Unreal Engine. That would have hurt, because that means that anybody that's developing an app wouldn't be able to put it on the App Store if it was done with the Unreal Engine, because you couldn't have support. That kills a ton of the market. That kills Epic's shares, everything. So they weren't able to do that, because luckily the judge stepped in, said you can't do that, but yes, Fortnite can go. Then they got kicked off. Epic sued Apple again. Apple turned around, did a countersuit against Epic. I mean, it's just nuts. So
the real question is that how much dollars are involved in this Sue game?
How many dollars? Oh, good God.
Billions.
Is it billions or billions?
I mean, if you look at the user base just on the iPhone alone, and then take out the user base of Fortnite roughly has close to 40-50 million user base. I mean, its user base is just massive. And then you take those iPhone users out of that market, those iPad users out of that market, those Android users. So you take the top three operating systems out of the playing field. So that hurts a lot. You're talking about billions of dollars easy. So yeah, they're back in court still. I think the next court case, Epic it was Apple that just did the countersuit against Epic. So this is nuts. This is just nuts. It's not going to get resolved until one of them comes off some money. It all boils back to that. If Epic says, okay, we're going to go through you for our transactions, and we're not going to mess with that anymore, they'll be back there easy. If Apple says, okay, well, we'll just do a 15% drop on what you do, and we'll restructure everything, they'll be back.
What about is Epic on sale as well? Can anyone buy a stake or maybe buy out Epic, sorry.
No. I mean, yes, stocks are falling a little bit, and it's not due to what's that battle there, because again, Epic creates the Unreal Engine. Even though Fortnite is a dominant player in the video game market, Epic has the Unreal Engine. The Unreal Engine is used on a massive amount of games that are actually developed today, from Street Fighter all the way down to whatever you can name. It was done on the Unreal Engine. So it's nuts. And with the craziest part though, is that what hurt the market more was the fact that people were scared that the US government was going to block Tencent, and Tencent was the one that owns the market share of Epic, owns a market share of a ton of other games that are out there. That would have hurt more so than the battle between Apple and Epic, because you're taking a huge bite out of the whole video game industry when you attack Tencent. Even though that's actually happening right now in India, if I remember. The battle with Tencent in India.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so a lot of things going on. In fact, there was an article that during the COVID, in India, there's like a jump of gaming people from whatever the numbers to 25% up, because everyone is at home and playing games, and then they're following all the games around the world, and they have like gaming cons, Indian level gaming cons on Zoom and different media and all those stuff, and people are creating a lot of new games and all those stuff. But also a lot of companies, what they're doing is that I heard about some games or something which is called eHollywood something. I don't know about that, but we are coming up with eBollywood games where there are Bollywood characters and then they're playing games or maybe based on some movies and all those stuff. So that's also coming up.
You know, it's so interesting how like culture, we can take culture and then we'll do some stuff to it. We'll get outputs, and then we can do the same stuff to those outputs, and then we get new outputs. So in the same way that we took the rapper beefs and then we had Def and Vendetta or Fight in New York, we could have a video game that's about the beef between Apple and Epic. It could be a thing, and who knows? Maybe it would actually take off. Maybe people would relate to it, right? Because those are
So now now the question is, would you be playing an Apple game or an Epic game or a Google game?
Yeah, right.
So,
Gotta have an outsider, someone coming in from the bottom, an indie developer. The
so
Witcher people.
what I had was an actual it would be an Epic game because Epic bought Psionic. I figured we might hit some high notes with some of the games that are most recognizable, because we were talking before, I remember, about the educational side of things, and how instead of looking at games as just being violent, because that's what kids are going to always hear. Footloose was about a movie about people, oh, you're dancing, you're going to bring up the devil. They were just dancing.
Yeah.
Let them dance. So just like video games, it's the same thing. These kids today see, oh, well, my mom keeps telling me that it's violent and it's rotting my brain. Well, there's an educational portion that your parents don't even know about that really is helping you down the line. For example, Fortnite, which I was going to bring up as well. Fortnite actually has a creative builder side. That creative builder side, I mean, that has such practical application of anything you can think of today. If you're building a circuit board, one of the things that you have to do is what? Lay out the circuit board. Well, in your creative builder, just like with Minecraft and the other ones, what you're trying to do is map out a world, map out a little area that can be utilized for these players to come through. So, I mean, it has such a practical application that's there. And some of these kids have built some beautiful boards. But yeah, with Rocket League, which is the one I was going to pull up, that one is kind of neat because that one has, let me see if I can share the audio.
Rocket League is a really creative game. Do you know about Rocket League, Mark?
I've heard of Rocket League. It's been a minute since I've heard of that and everything. I was actually just getting over the fact of Toby mentioning Footloose and everything, which is way before your generation, Julian, and get something. They're going like, do they even know who Patrick Swayze is or who any of those stars were from Footloose?
I do, from the rap music that like talks about these things. Yeah, it's really funny. Actually, a lot of my knowledge of some of the older cultural staples are just recycled into these, like rap songs and references to them. So I know who he is just from references, almost like tongue in cheek.
Gotcha.
Some good stuff. Oh, something else I was thinking, just the navigation through menus in video games actually really teaches kids how to use computers. And I'm pretty sure knowing how to navigate through a start menu will help somebody order food at McDonald's when they go up to the self-serve kiosk, right? Because basically,
it's interesting that you mentioned that, though, Julie, because I actually had a friend of mine, and I think I mentioned this on one of our previous shows, but she was actually finding that her son, who I think is in the 3rd grade, so like around 8 or 9, actually was very good at video games, do all the video games, but now they're having to go into online education. That's where he's having a hard time, because like she's having to teach him what Windows is, like the Windows operating system and things of that nature. So he's definitely very much into the game aspect of computers, but he's having a hard time with the actual more like practical side of it with education.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what Rocket League is.
What?
And this goes into the whole. All Rocket League is when it started. This isn't their actual first game. Their first game was similar to this, but it didn't take off. Psionic's second game, which is Rocket League, is the one that took off. Let me pull it up real quick.
So, Judovi, did you play this game earlier?
Yeah.
Julian, what do you?
Let's see.
Julian, did you play this game earlier?
Oh yeah.
Did you play this earlier? No.
So I actually don't have this game, but I have played it, and it's a really big game. And what really interests me about the game, more than I guess how well received it was, is what it really accomplished in the fact that it's kind of creative because it brought 2 games together that people might not usually think about. And those are, I guess you could say race car driving or RC car race car driving and soccer. So it's really creative to imagine this game where, you know, you're in a car. I don't want to take too much punch out of it.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Basically, for anyone who doesn't know, you'll probably know, you just play soccer with cars. And it really just stands out to me because it's not the most complex game, but just the creativity of that simple combination created an experience that people can deeply relate to and they can get excited about. But it's something that, you know, I would never think, oh, let's cross cars and soccer together and see what we get.
Wow.
Soccer.
So, it is such a fun game. Let's see. Here, I wonder.
And you have rockets. That's the thing about it. So you have rockets attached to your cars.
Oh, no.
So not only are you playing, you know, soccer and you're driving around and you have the thrill of all that, but you can push the button and then suddenly there's fire and things going even faster. And then you can use that skillfully to make, you know, a trick shot or to maybe knock the ball further than you could have otherwise.
So the cool part about it, another cool part about it, if you notice, right now I just put it in effective mode. But if you notice the backgrounds, they'll do like different representations of different places, which is kind of cool, and also the creativity of the actual board, because as you see, they're driving up and down the side of the walls. This game has a roughly about another $40 million or 40 million person following it. It's one of the staples in the esports industry. This game alone, for example, which the esports industry is pretty wild. This,
you know, I think people love flipping cars as well. That reminds me of Grand Theft Auto. People love flipping cars.
So one of the early games was Twisted Metal. That's for example, this game alone in this year was released until well, actually August, has given out close to $10 million in prize money in tournament.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
They're not hurting, that's for sure.
No, but that's
not at all.
That's the esports industry. So the esports industry itself, I mean, it's wild, the amount of money that comes from it. So the video game market, the video game industry is the esports industry is part of the video game industry. The video game industry is already it surpassed the music and movie industry combined by far. It had grossed roughly about $167 billion in just last year alone. So you have the esports industry that just crossed over $1 billion. It has been, it has been jumping 40% roughly each year since 2015, 2014. Wow. So the market itself for the esports money is huge, because if you think about one of the books then turned into a movie that Steven Spielberg did, Ready Player One. That's where we're going. You could talk about how over from India, Korea, Japan, China, even the European market, you have some of the esports players that are twice as big as a NBA player or an NFL player.
Definitely.
They are huge because
I'll tell you something. I mean, if you talk about esports, cricket is one of the biggest religion as well as sports in South Asia, and there are tons of cricket games, and every game is like $1 million following.
Yeah, it's nuts.
$1 million following, yeah.
And it's similar here, but it's not, of course, cricket, because the U.S. doesn't follow cricket as much, even though it's a great sport. But yeah,
we just haven't got with it yet. But Anchor's gonna make sure that we get with it in the next 5 years.
But the wild part about it is the majority of games that dominate the esports market are League of Legends. That's a global, but US, it's League of Legends. Dota 2, which is more global and more in your area, Ankin, with India and that side. Dota 2, which is the number one. That one is huge, but they're all about doing magic and people following around you've got Rocket League, which is another dominant one in the esports world. We're not
But in
going to
fact, I'll tell you something. I mean, in India, what we are doing is that we are doing a lot of localized language game as well, and with local heroes. So those games are only played in India or maybe in some countries nearby. But those games you never expose in the US continent because you won't understand what we are trying to say or what we are trying to play because those are like local heroes. And when you talk about gaming industry, we have like millions followers because we have 1.3 billion people and. If I talk about youngsters, like 70% of the crowds are under 35. So that means you have 50 to 30% of the people who play games, either on mobile phone, or on a lot of stuff. And then if you have one hit game, which is the local game, you are talking about like 50, 20 million people are playing the same game.
Yeah, easily. Hey, Jacoby, coming back to this game and everything, are you Tex or are you Outlaw? Because if you're, and I can't see you as an Outlaw personality. I've known you for a number of years, and you're not really an Outlaw kind of guy. So I'm assuming you're Tex, and if you're Tex, you're losing, or maybe you're winning.
So, in all honesty, I'm just spectating.
Okay.
So there are in the esports industry or in a lot of the video games, spectating is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Rocket League has one of the best spectating setups because people understand what the game is. It's just soccer with cars. Easy to understand. It's easy to pick up. And it's an easy game to spectate. Games like Fortnite, which is an esport, all the other shooters, Counter-Strike Go, Rainbow Six.
People like to watch Tetris a lot too.
But it's easy to understand and see. Shooters are tough because one, you cannot watch it in real time because what ends up happening, people like to cheat. So if I know where you are, if I'm watching your stream and I know where you are, then I'm coming to find you and I'm going to go take you out. And Counter-Strike Go and all the shooting games, Valorant, it's tougher to watch. So the spectate mode isn't really all that great. And then it's harder to follow. League of Legends and Dota and all the RPGs, those are easier to watch, but tough to understand for the non-gamer. Because
so for that reason, do you think that Halo, which brought about, what was it called, like Forge mode, and it had theater mode, how do you think that helped? Do you think that made shooters a bit more accessible because suddenly people were able to start recording their entire battles, and then they did that, and it seemed like they really liked it?
For your person that plays the game, they love it. For the person that is like a spectator and doesn't know what the game is, it's confusing. And it just is, I mean, you can't, like with Rocket League, you can follow around from Tex to Tusk to Fury, all these other people. You can watch them. You can see the different perspectives, just like a basketball game, just like anything else. It's only one person's perspective in Halo. It's the same thing with Fortnite. All the other shooters, it's not jumping around. You can't see the giant map. You can't see the board of what's going on. So it's hard to understand exactly what's happening in those shooters.
Mm-hmm. So you think people like replays for themselves, but spectators wouldn't get as much value. Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, Julian, I think that orange car was your car. That looked like the kind of car that you would be driving. So I can see you in that kind of orange sports car. So that looks like you, Julian.
Hey, my first car, I got a 1996 Mazda Miata. It was red. It was a convertible. Yeah, it was great. I got it really cheap from a farmer nearby. So that's a pretty good eye, Mark. I would definitely enjoy something like that.
And see, with like your Fortnites, for example, here, I'll jump onto, let me leave that match. Your Fortnite, oh, I didn't mean to create a match. Just went back into it. Your Fortnites, again, like I said, those are harder to follow because it's hard to follow the whole board. League of Legends is easy to follow, but tough to understand because you don't know what's going on.
Mm.
So it's a matter of you can see the board, you see where everybody's going, but you don't know what's happening really. You don't understand that, okay, well, I'm on Summoner's Rift. I've got a person blocking the crystal, and I've got to go take everybody else out this way. And I can pop from person to person, and I understand, I can see it, but I don't understand it. So it's Rocket League right now is the best balance of all of that, because it takes a sport that you can understand, you can see, and you really know what's happening.
Yeah, and everyone loves soccer. Like, it's one of the, isn't it the biggest sport globally, or is it not? Okay, yeah. So
Yep.
I guess that's another great idea. It's kind of like using instruments, like whenever Guitar Hero chose to use the guitar because it has a large bass, Rocket League will choose soccer because soccer has a large bass.
Yep.
Even though I think that Ankit might take offense at us saying that it's the largest game, because I think that he argues that cricket beats soccer, but we'll see if he comes back on and he wants to argue that point, because I won't say that he thinks that his 1.2 billion or however many people might.
Well, maybe, yeah, who knows? Maybe on a per person level, it actually does take the cake. It's just on a spread across the map level, maybe that soccer would have more grounds, but who knows? Maybe not.
Yeah.
League of Legends.
Iconic.
Yeah, soccer is because cricket is played less in the States than soccer is.
Yes.
Although cricket, even though I don't even think that it's played more than in the other countries. There he is, Ankin. You can help us with it. Soccer or cricket?
Anytime
We're trying to decide which is the most popular in terms of popularity. I was thinking that Joe 1.2.
I'll give you the numbers basically. Cricket is being followed by around 700 million people around the world.
Okay, and how many is soccer?
I know soccer is another popular game because there are a lot of countries play soccer. But cricket is played between good countries. We have like 15 countries who play. At world level, but there are a lot of associated games as well going around. So that's what with cricket. But I think soccer is more popular, and we also follow soccer. We follow EPLs and all those World Cups and all those Euro Cups and all those stuff. Not American football that much, but definitely soccer is one of the popular games. Certainly, we also have a lot of soccer leagues in India as well.
So okay, there you go. So soccer leagues are big. Yeah, that's what we were discussing, the creativity of Rocket League and how it chose a game that is, really big. Do you think that cars in cricket could make a game where you have a car with a big, hand on the top, or?
No. So with cricket, cricket. If you see cricket, there are multiple games in cricket. So there's a bowling game, there's a batting game, there's a skills game, or there's a fielding game. So under cricket there are multiple games. It's a matter of what kind of games you wanted to play. Everyone in cricket wants to be a batter because they wanted to just hit a home run, which is a fix for us.
Right.
So there are multiple levels to play games, and then there are games where you have some numbers. So suppose suddenly you need to score 24 runs in 1 over. That's a game. So just have random numbers. And in some point of time you wanted to play a single bowler. So suppose there's a bowler from South Africa, you wanted to just beat that bowler. So there are different ways, and then there are speed games in cricket where how much speed of ball you can bowl. So like a spinner bowls like 90, not 90, around 50 miles an hour, but a fast bowler bowls more than 90 miles an hour. So there are multiple levels of games, a complete game, a half game, or something like that. So that's what
Imagine Rocket League analogs of all of those.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture that, like Rocket League connected to that. But I also know, because I'm not sure how popular race car driving is in India. So that would be the other component of what goes on with the Rocket League. So is race car driving popular in India?
Yeah, race car popular in India. We have some tracks. In fact, Formula One had a couple of races in India earlier as well. But we are a country where we follow two religions apart from all the religions. That is cricket and Bollywood. Apart from the rest, everything will be our sport basically. So cricket is like a religion. If the game is going on between England and Australia, people will watch it. It's not just about Indian cricket. Cricket is that.
What are your thoughts on that, Jatovi? If we were to put Rocket League, for instance, take a car, but then start applying it to other popular games from around the world, like cricket?
It
would be hilarious.
Hey, Rocket
That's
League,
what I was thinking. It would definitely be hilarious watching like Rocket League cricket.
What we can do is with Rocket League, we can definitely integrate hockey, because hockey with a smaller ball, that could be an interesting option. It looks similar with different rules.
Actually, what I'll do. So what they've done with Rocket League, let me show you.
In fact, there's a game in India called Polo. I'm not sure. How big is that in US? But that Polo is like a hockey with horse. So
Yeah.
people play polo, and then it's similar to hockey, but you have to ride a horse as well.
So
Hmm.
Rocket League actually has a bunch of different options in there.
Okay.
Soccer was just one of them. Let me see.
Imagine being a car riding on another car to knock a ball with a mallet.
Oh, you're gonna do the Rocket League polo? Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got hoops,
Polo League.
Okay. Okay.
basketball,
Yeah.
snow day. I haven't tried the snow day, and you've got just the different ones that are there. But your soccer is the big one. The hoops is actually kind of neat because you've actually got to hit the ball up to make it go in.
Hmm.
And
What
I'm
about
guessing so-
volleyball? Can we integrate volleyball with in Rocket League?
That would be so fun.
Yeah.
It would just be hard to predict the ball. That would be the hardest part, I guess.
Yeah, and then to stay on your side of the court, that'd be tough too.
Yeah.
Well, I just had another one that could be
court is
really
small,
interesting.
basically.
What's
That
that?
court is pretty small as compared to the bigger ones.
Oh yeah, the basketball looks really good. But I was just thinking because Anki just mentioned polo, and it's not all that popular here in the states.
No.
I mean, we know about it, and we definitely there are folks that might play it here and there. But I was just thinking about how about Rocket League water polo?
Oh,
I mean,
submarine
that would be jet skis.
with dolphin submarine? Oh, okay, jet skis. Hey, that'd be.
Yeah.
So, Jitovi, I think it's almost time to wrap up. But I'll tell you something. There is one important sport in India which is known as kabaddi. Have you heard about it?
Which one?
Kabaddi.
Nuh-uh.
Julian? Mark?
No, I have not. I have not.
No, I have not.
So, what I'll do is on the next show, we'll talk about kabaddi and the games on esports in India, what they do, because it's although it's a world game. I mean, people from different countries play the game, and there is no ball, there is no bat, there is no tool. It's about your hands, and you have to touch that person and just change the direction. That's it. I mean, so you have to touch it and then go to your court.
Huh.
Yeah,
So
but it's a
it
Yeah, we can
sounds
do that.
somewhat similar to highlight. Is it
Yeah.
similar to highlight?
I don't know what is highlight.
It's kind of like a handball kind of game. Is that the way you would describe it,
But
Jacoby?
there's no ball to it. There is no ball in kabaddi, basically. So suppose Julian and me are one team, and then Jatubi and Mark are other team. I will cross the line and reach to your court, and then touch you, and then come back to my court. If you block me, then I'm out. But if you can't block me, I will make you out. That's it. That's the
So
game.
almost like capture the flag, kind of like capture the flag.
No flags. Just
No,
touch
no
the
flags.
ball.
I know, but it's kind of like a territory kind of game like that, right?
Yeah.
So wait a
territory,
second.
but you have like, huh?
So wait a second. You tag and then go back to your side?
Yeah. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like capture the flag, and well, not just like it, but kind of similar. It's like going back and forth and stopping each other and trying to slip by.
Yeah, something like that. But it's a very interesting game. We play in mud as well as on the court as well, and then it's a world game. India's are world champions in that game. Although there are a lot of countries play, and there are different courts, but generally it's a small court. It's a court like maybe a badminton court, maybe smaller than that, basically. And then there are two sides, and it's very athletic without anything else. And what you have to do whenever you come to that other person's court, other team's court, you have to say kabaddi, 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 kabaddi without taking a breath. If you take a breath, you're out.
You have to say that without taking a breath. Jacoby, we need to do one thing right here, right now. And I know we got to wrap up this show, but when you go back in and we watch this on the different platforms and everything, I want you to take a screenshot of both me and Jacoby's face because we were both totally lost, but particularly Jacoby. So we need a screenshot of that for our listening stuff for Gamers Den.
That
We were both
game also
going
has a music as well because you play your own music. Everyone have their different way to say kabaddi, 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 or tu, and then they have to play the game.
That's cool. They have their own theme. Yeah.
And
Okay,
that's a
we're
very
gonna play this
without
game.
anything else. You have to
It
be very
sounds
athletic.
like
And you have to know all the summer slams and all the roller coasters because you have to just tag the person and then you have to just way out. So and then every person is having their own role. So one is a defender, one is a striker, and then one is a all-rounder who manages all those stuff. And then they're amazing. I mean, it's a fun to watch, and we watch a lot of So we have a Kabaddi League as well, which is very popular, and I think we can talk about that in our next episode. That would be interesting. It's
Yeah,
like
it
a
sounds
kind,
very strategic. I'm really curious. I'm gonna look this up. Yeah, look
I'm
forward to that.
gonna see if they have a video game on it.
I think they have it. Yeah, they have it.
Yeah, probably on like Super Nintendo by the sound of it. Who knows?
So that was a fun show. And before we wrap up, game of the week, and then we'll wrap up with a new intro. Julian?
So, game of the week.
My own game of the week.
No,
I've
that's it.
actually just been messing around with some of those silly Bejeweled style games. Those were the only new games I messed with. Yeah, I haven't really had much time for gaming, but I played a few of those Bejeweled games, and those were pretty fun. Also, I kind of like some of those typing games they have on the internet. I think that those are good for kids to teach them how to type. I saw a few of those, and those are pretty cool. But no particular best of the best this time.
Wonderful.
So my game of the week. I'm gonna use this to give a shout out to a group that has a Kickstarter game that they're trying to push out there. It got released on Steam about a month ago. And since we're on this whole soccer theme, this game is called Guts and Goals.
Okay.
Basically, it's as we were talking about earlier, how the old school games and stuff like that. It's got the characters that look like they're 16-bit characters. Well, 8 to 16-bit characters, and they're just running around on a soccer field. It's really silly. It's pretty violent because you have these characters, their body parts don't move. The only thing that moves is the bat in your hand. So you've got a ball that you've got to hit to the other side, and you've got a bat that you've got to move people out of the way with. It's hilarious.
Wow.
Education value is the same as every other game that's out there. I mean, you got to come up with strategies to get around with people. The ball changes to different
Wait.
things. It'll be a spike ball, so you got to watch out how you get hit by the spike ball. But it's actually a pretty funny game. So yeah, I'll say that's my game of the week is Guts and Goals.
Mark, what about you?
Game of the week, but y'all know I'm always playing Words with Friends, and I'm still doing that. But I'm gonna switch it up on y'all this time. I'm trying to catch up with Julian in terms of my knowledge and everything. So my game of the week is actually gonna be a toss-up between Jeopardy and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, because I'm trying to get as much knowledge as Julian's got. So I'm gonna go with one of those two.
Hey, that's more like something Nick Talaveda would be able to go and whiz, right? With Trivia Tuesdays.
Yes.
Yeah, they do very well on Jeopardy. I like Jeopardy personally, but Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was a good staple, I think, too.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Oh yeah, Jeopardy is also useful in an academic setting. I know that there are teachers that'll make a study guide for a test in the Jeopardy format. It seems a bit more usable in that way than the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which is pretty much just a test. It's just the final exam.
Yeah, but at least in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I can call Jacoby if there's a question on a game that I don't know the answer to. So I'll just use him as my lifeline.
Yeah, right. So unlike in academia where you take a final exam and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you do get to cheat a tiny bit, but it's still within bounds. It's like a tutor.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a good show. And
Wait a minute, Ankit. You don't get away. You don't get away. You gotta have a game show. Nice try, but you don't get away.
So I didn't get time to play a game, but I wanted to play pool because that's something which diverts me from something what I'm doing. So pool is like a cool game, and I can listen to music and play a pool game on any console. So that's for me, pool.
Right.
Yeah, it's a fine choice. I feel like pool is also one of those games that you see the outcomes of it in other games. Even Rocket League is somewhat about that same, concept of just slamming into the ball and, seeing it hopefully go where you want it to.
Yeah.
But the other thing about pool is that pool is also very much of a mathematical game because you got to know all of those different ways to do the shot and to use geometry and trigonometry and various other mathematical figures in order to get those shots. At least that's the way I think you're supposed to do it. But maybe you're just trying to get the shots on a lucky shot. So, Ankit, are you actually a master at using math and science to make your shots, or are you just trying to be lucky with your shots?
So I will tell you something that I'm playing pool from past 15 years. a game. I'm not talking about the real pool, but definitely a game. And I'm not sure about the rating, but I play fine. Well, but, I mean, if you allow me to play with someone else, I can complete the game basically. So that's what I do. But I don't play that much, so I can't see that I'm a master or pro of it. But I generally play a lot.
Jacoby, it sounds to me like he was doing a very good job of bluffing. So the next time we go to whenever COVID is done and we're having a place at a bar, we're going to use him as the person to sucker some of these folks so we can win some money. Because it sounds like he was doing a real good job of bluffing.
I got lost on the fact that you said trigonometry is a part of pool. I know geometry is there.
Reflex angle.
What in the world?
Well, I was just trying to impress Julian. Maybe I was off with the wrong one.
No, I mean,
I think there's some trigonometry involved.
Let's go. I think it has analytical calculus in there.
Oh.
See?
it is true. It is.
Reflection analysis.
So
It's
what do you
more,
think, Julian? Does trigonometry fit in there? Does analytical calculus fit in?
Well, of course, it all plays a bit of a role. You know, it's just which math system is fun to use? Which math system can we call a game that's actually enjoyable? That's more what the question is. Yeah, because pool, that's definitely enjoyable, but doing trigonometry, that might not be as enjoyable, even though it's technically it could be representing the same thing. One thing I do like. I like trick shots in pool. I think trick shots in pool are pretty common to some of the other game mechanics, like bouncing a ball over others to knock it is kind of like Rocket League.
And Jacoby and Julian and Mark, that pool trick shots, they are one of the popular YouTubers as well. I mean, people post those shots like multi times, and they have millions of views, and that's what they do basically, apart from playing professional pool. So that is something which they add onto it, and then people would like to watch pool as well. I mean, it's like a colorful game, and you know how the ball rolls around from here and there.
It's almost like the golf clubs of like the middle class.
No, pool was very much of a fun game. Folks definitely enjoyed watching it. I remember watching a very late night pool show. I'm not going to lie. There was also kind of like the wrestling lady that would walk around as well. So it might have been some eye candy was also part of the reason of watching that game. But definitely I enjoyed the match as well.
Yeah, pool is always been pretty neat.
So I think, Jacoby, what we can do is next week we can discuss about Kabaddi, and we can discuss about World Wrestling, because there are a lot of wrestling games as well, which are very popular. And also, there's a game called Kusti, or known as freestyle. So that is kind of a wrestling game, basically, but that's an Olympic sport. That's not a wrestling, what we used to watch on WWE. So that's a different game. So we can talk about all those games, which is kind of a part of esports as well, and also a gaming thing, and also big in sports.
What I'll bring up, what I'll play next week, or actually put on the screen next week, is one of the original games that really put wrestling on the video game market, which is called Pro Wrestling on the NES. On the old Nintendo, they released it for the Switch. So it's really cool. Starman was my favorite character, but
the name is just so short.
Before we get off and everything, don't forget that we also have in about a few days from now, we've got World Peace Day, and I know that Jacoby's going to bring us some games related to that. So definitely we got that coming up on the 20th, if I remember correctly. So that is on the 21st, right?
Yeah. Wonderful. So thanks for the show, and it's time to wrap, and have a good day, and we'll see you next week. Tomorrow we have Med Friday with Doctors, followed by Financial Friday on IBM TV. So do join us, and it's time to wrap from IBM Studio right here.